I was in the Department of Medicine, Division of Neurology. I was in the Department of Surgery, Division of Neurosurgery. In the mid-70s, the world revolution of new imaging technology occurred. And so we made a proposal with the Department of Radiology to acquire the first, what then was called an EMI scanner, later called a CAT scanner, and now called a CT scanner. And following that, we sat down with our colleagues from the Calgary General Hospital, and we started having rather interesting get-togethers about the possibility of forming a Department of Neurosciences.
We all had a common interest in that, not just neurology and neurosurgery, but neuropathology and neuroradiology and the basic neurosciences. And the fact that we were dealing with patients who had diseases or problems affecting the nervous system, and so we had a common link there. Many of the patients that we saw in the neurology service would end up having surgical treatment for their disorders, and we had a dedicated nursing staff which sort of crossed the boundaries between neurology and neurosurgery. So I think that's the way things got started. The original proposal that we drafted, I think, was called a regional program for neurology and neurosurgery for Southern Alberta, and it didn't really say anything about a department.
What it was actually a white paper to form what would now be called the Southern Alberta Institute of Neurology and Neurosciences. In the fall of 1979, Peter Seeland, who was head of neurology at the Calgary General Hospital, and I were invited to meet with Premier Lougheed and his then Minister of Health, David Russell. Government people did follow up. First, they went to the deans of the two medical schools, because in Alberta, if you do anything in Calgary, it's got to be replicated in Edmonton. Our dean here was Lionel McLeod, and the dean in Edmonton didn't think there was any need for a reorganization of their faculty along these lines at all. So Lionel proposed that instead of forming a self-governing institute, in a way, that we form a Department of Neurosciences.
We formed the department. There was no one in the Department of Pathology who had specialized advanced training in neuropathology. So Dr. Bernadette Curry, who was a general pathologist but was showing some interest in neuropathology, we arranged for her to go to Toronto to spend a year, or maybe 2 years, I can't remember, with Dr. Barry Rucastle. And while she was there, I think the head of the Department of Pathology stepped down, and they recruited Barry Rucastle. So Bernadette Curry and Barry Rucastle arrived back together, and very quickly Dr. Rucastle recruited 3 more neuropathologists. So we went from 0 to 5 in a very short period of time, and really had more expertise in neuropathology, I think, than any other center in the country. Looking back on it, I think we were pretty ambitious because we had, I think there were a total of 7 neurologists in the city, and 5 neurosurgeons. Yeah. And out of those, I think there were only 3 full-time GFT university positions. Frank and me and Keith Brownell, who had joined us. So we were pretty thin on the ground.
We should point out that we had terrific allies in the neurological nurses to go in that direction. we had formed our own postgraduate program, 6-month course in neurological and neurosurgical nursing in about 1975 or 6, and when our new department came in, that was still going. And our own, even though we had nurses coming from the United States and Australia to take this course, we had enough Canadian and Albertan or Western Canadian nurses take it who wanted to stay here, because we had a very good nursing team and we had a good clinical team. The reason both Bob and I arrived here fundamentally was the opening of a new medical school and the rather urgent need by 1971 to create a curriculum in the neuroscience core program.
I arrived January 1, 1974.
Yeah, and I January 1, 1971. And we were able to round off the finer points of the neuroscience curriculum after Bob and conscripted some of the local neurologists, but we had already conscripted the basic scientists who were very, very helpful in the original curriculum here.
I think we were very fortunate to be in a new medical school with a new approach to teaching and to research. Because when the medical school was set up here, they intentionally de-emphasized a rigid departmental structure. So it was a sort of a natural move for all the neuroscience disciplines to come together. And I think it would have been much more difficult to do this at one of the older established universities. I think it was generally agreed for quite a few years that the neuroscience course, which was given in the second year of the medical school program, was one of the best, or maybe the best, systems course. And I think it probably still is looked upon.
I think it still is. You had residents in neurosurgery before we started the department.
And the neurology residency program started, I think, within a year after, or maybe the same year when we formed the department, and Bill Fletcher arrived as the first resident in the neurology training program. I think what we have tried to do in the residency programs, both in neurology and neurosurgery, is to encourage the residents to become involved in research projects within the neuroscience research group or the Hotchkiss Brain Institute, and several people have from both training programs have gone on and done master's degrees or PhDs as part of their training. So I think we're getting to the point now where a fair number of the graduates from the residency programs are coming out with all the qualifications that we think are part of being a so-called clinician investigator or physician scientist. After Frank and I were fading a little bit into the background and Tom Feasby took over as department head, that things really started to move.
I can't think of a more heartwarming development for me than to see that the leadership that has gone on since my retirement has been stellar. And the gradual blossoming to the full bouquet that we see today in nursing, I think has put the University of Calgary and this medical school really way up on the top rungs of it.